He proceeded to tell me that he would kill me if I told on him. He told me exactly what he did to Mr. Robertson. He told me that Mr. Robertson begged for his life and that the only thing he was worried about was that he was on tether.
On January 25th, 2024, police responded to a quiet apartment complex where they would discover 3 bodies, 2 traumatized children who witnessed everything, and a suspect who had been free from prison for exactly 6 weeks. The question you're probably asking is, how does a convicted murderer walk free only to allegedly kill 3 more people before anyone could stop him? Let me take you back to December 13th, 2023. That's when Larry Dwayne Reed walked out of a Texas Department of Criminal Justice facility after serving approximately 9 years for murder. He had pleaded guilty back in 2014 to shooting and killing 18-year-old Obeth Hernandez at a house party in 2012. Reed was just 17 when he committed that murder, and he also wounded a 21-year-old victim in the same incident. With credits for time served and good behavior, the system determined he had paid his debt to society. But here's where this story takes a disturbing turn that exposes something deeply broken in our justice system. While Reed was locked up, something happened in March 2021 that should have kept him behind bars for years longer. Reed viciously assaulted his cellmate, beating him while the man was on the ground, then did something that demonstrates just how brazen he had become. Using a contraband cell phone, which is a 3rd-degree felony in Texas, punishable by 2 to 10 years in prison, Reed live-streamed himself gloating about the attack on Facebook. He was literally broadcasting his violence to the world from inside a prison cell. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice investigated, and the case was referred to the Office of Inspector General and the Special Prosecution Unit. And then nothing. No criminal charges were filed. Reed received only administrative discipline, which is essentially a slap on the wrist. If Texas had prosecuted him for that contraband cell phone felony, Reed would have been in prison when January 25th, 2024 rolled around. 3 people would still be alive, but instead, the system let him walk free. Now let's talk about the 3 victims whose lives were about to intersect with Larry Reed's on that tragic night. First, there was Monique Elaine Smith Glenn, a 29-year-old caregiver at Bethesda Gardens Assisted Living in Arlington. Born June 29, 1994, Monique was known for her compassion, her infectious laughter, and her deep devotion to her family. She had graduated from Lamar High School, earned a phlebotomy certification, and found her calling in helping elderly residents at the assisted living facility where she worked. Her colleagues would later describe her as someone who brought light into every room she entered. Monique loved gospel music, particularly Yolanda Adams and Tasha Cobbs Leonard. She enjoyed volleyball, shopping, cooking, and decorating her home. But more than anything, she loved her 3 children, Camarion Deshawn Foster from a previous relationship, King Jason Glenn, who she shared with her husband, and Camaria, affectionately called KK. On February 6, 2022, Monique had married the love of her life, Jarrell Drayon Glenn, and together they were building what appeared to be a stable, loving home. But Jarrell's life was complicated in ways that would ultimately put everyone in danger. At 31 years old, Jarrell went by the nicknames Hood Rich or JICC. While he was described by family as a devoted father, actively involved in his children's lives, his social media presence told a different story. Jarrell frequently posted images displaying large amounts of cash and luxury items, signaling involvement in street activities that came with serious risks.
I always like talking, cuz if it ain't about this, I don't want to talk, cuz I'm just chill, stay out the way, trying to beat this case and get these blue strips. I got some old hundreds.
And there was something else in Jarrell's past that reveals just how dangerous his associations were. Back in 2019, Jarrell had been arrested and charged with capital murder and the fatal shooting of Brian Veramontes during a recording session at an Arlington apartment. Police arrested 3 individuals in that case, with 1 suspect still at large at the time. But here's what's significant. By 2024, Jarrell was free, suggesting the charges were either dropped or he was acquitted. The details of what happened with that case aren't clear from public records, but what is clear is that Jarrell was moving in circles where violence was always just one disagreement away. The third victim that night was someone who truly was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Shannon O'Shea Jones was a 29-year-old mobile barber who had discovered his passion for cutting hair at age 10 when he practiced on his mother's dolls. Just 2 months before his death, Shannon had officially licensed his barbering business, planning to expand his mobile services throughout the Arlington area. His mother, Paula Johnson, would later describe him as someone who constantly looked for ways to give back to his community. Shannon would offer free haircuts to school children and single-parent families, earning him the reputation as a true community servant. Shannon was a proud father of a 5-year-old son and a 2-month-old daughter. He loved barbecuing for family gatherings, hosting game nights, and making people laugh with his vibrant personality. According to his mother, Shannon had recently matured significantly, settling into fatherhood and planning to propose to the mother of his children. On February 25, 2024, Shannon was simply visiting the Glenn's apartment for a haircut appointment. It was a routine stop in his mobile barbering rounds and had no way of knowing that this ordinary business call would cost him his life. By late January 2024, Larry Dwayne Reed had been free for just over 6 weeks. He had reconnected with people in the Arlington area, including Jarrell Glenn. Exactly how they knew each other isn't fully detailed in public records, but what is clear is that Reed and Jarrell had some kind of prior connection. And on the evening of January 25th, whatever disagreement existed between them was about to explode into unimaginable violence. The Chatham Green Village apartment complex on Chatham Green Lane is typically a quiet, family-oriented community. Working-class residents, young families, people just trying to make it day to day. That evening, around 8:30, neighbors would later report hearing a loud noise that sounded like someone kicking in a door, followed almost immediately by gunshots. Inside apartment number unknown on the 2nd floor, Monique and Jarrell's 2 young children were about to witness something no child should ever see. Arlington Police Department officers responding to reports of gunfire at the Chatham Green Village apartments that night found a scene of absolute carnage. When they arrived at approximately 8:33 p.m., they discovered 3 adults with fatal gunshot wounds. The violence was swift, targeted, and brutal. And according to police reports and witness accounts pieced together from various sources, this is what happened inside that apartment. Larry Reed allegedly forced his way into the apartment by kicking in the door. The sound neighbors reported hearing was Reed's violent entry into what should have been a safe family space. Once inside, Reed allegedly shot Jarrell first, hitting him in the leg during what police described as a disagreement between the 2 men. But Reed didn't stop there. As Jarrell lay wounded, Reed continued firing, ultimately inflicting multiple gunshot wounds that would prove fatal. Jarrell was still alive when first responders arrived, but he would die later at the hospital from his injuries. But the carnage didn't end with Jarrell. Monique Smith Glenn was found inside the apartment with a gunshot wound to her neck. She was pronounced dead at the scene. And then there was Shannon O'Shea Jones, the visiting barber who had simply shown up to give someone a haircut. Police found his body in the doorway, suggesting he may have tried to flee when the shooting started, or was shot as he arrived. Either way, he had no chance. Throughout all of this horror, 2 young children were present in the apartment. The children were physically unharmed, but were witnesses to this brutal violence. They saw their father shot multiple times and most likely saw their mother killed. The children were later released to family members, but the psychological trauma they suffered that night they'll carry forever. After the shooting, Reed fled the scene. Witnesses reported seeing a man in black clothing running from the area. Police investigations revealed that nothing appeared to have been stolen from the apartment, ruling out robbery as a motive. Instead, investigators found evidence of what they described as high-risk drug activity at the scene. Within days of the murders, the Arlington Police Department had identified Larry Reed as their primary suspect. Using tips from the community and showing witnesses' photo lineups, investigators confirmed Reed's identity.
This morning, U.S. Marshals are asking for your help as well. They're still looking for 49-year-old Larry Reed. He's a fugitive wanted for a triple murder at an Arlington apartment complex last week. He was known to reside in Arlington and has some ties to Mississippi. Now, according to court documents, he was just released from prison for another murder a few weeks before this recent crime. A delivery driver found two men and a woman dead at an apartment complex on Chapman Green Lane on January 25th. Two children were also inside of that unit. Both of them are okay. U.S. Marshals say Reed is considered armed and dangerous. If you have information about his whereabouts, you are urged to call 911 for immediate assistance or the U.S. Marshals Service.
On February 2, 2024, Arlington police issued a warrant for Reed's arrest on capital murder charges. They warned the public that Reed should be considered armed and extremely dangerous, and also noted that Reed had ties to Mississippi, suggesting he might have fled the state. The description police released was crucial. They were looking for a 29-year-old black male who had already demonstrated his capacity for violence. This was someone who had killed before at age 17, and he was on the run. Now here's where we need to talk about motive, because the official police statements and media reports present a picture that's more complex than simple revenge. Yes, Reed and Jarrell knew each other. Yes, there was clearly some kind of disagreement or conflict between them. But police emphasized that evidence at the scene pointed to drug-related activity rather than a straightforward revenge killing. This wasn't necessarily about settling an old score. This was about two men involved in high-risk street activities having a dispute that escalated to murder. Jarrell's social media presence showing off cash and luxury items wasn't just bragging, it was advertising. It was signaling to everyone watching that he had money, that he had access to things people wanted, that he was operating in a world where disputes aren't settled in court but on the street. And when you operate in that world, you attract attention from people like Larry Reed, people who have already demonstrated they're willing to kill, people who see violence as a solution rather than a last resort. For Monique's family, the loss was incomprehensible. Her obituary, published by Dignity Memorial, focuses on celebrating her life rather than detailing her death. It talks about her faith, her career as a caregiver, and her love for her children.
Triple murder suspect is heading back to North Texas after being caught thousands of miles away in Mississippi.
He's accused of killing 3 people in Arlington last month, just weeks after getting out of jail for another murder.
Natalie Haddad is live this morning in Arlington. Okay, Natalie, what happened?
Kind of a crazy story, Kara. 29-year-old Larry Reed was only a free man for a couple of weeks by the time he was caught, arrested, and put back in jail for a triple murder that Arlington police say he is responsible for right here in the city. Now, Larry Reed is accused of murdering 3 people at an apartment complex in the 3500 block of Chatham Green Lane in late January. Police say he shot and killed 29-year-old Monique Smith, 29-year-old Shannon Jones, and an unnamed 31-year-old. Then he ran off to Mississippi. Then 12 days later, police there caught him, and now he will be extradited back to North Texas. Meanwhile, Shannon Jones's family is preparing his funeral. They say the state of Texas failed them by giving Reed a light sentence for previous crimes he committed, 11 years for murder back in 2012.
I just feel like they slapped him on the wrist and told him, okay, go to timeout. And when timeout is over with, you just come back here. It doesn't fix me. It doesn't fix my family.
Now, the process of extraditing Reed back to North Texas is going to take place in the coming days, but it'll be a couple days at least, until he is actually back here in Arlington. We'll keep you updated on when that happens, but for now, I'll send it back to you in studio, Mark.
Great, thank you for the update this morning, Natalie, as we turn.
For Shannon's family, the grief was compounded by the randomness of his death. His mother, Paula Johnson, told reporters that Shannon was a community servant who constantly looked for ways to give back. His 5-year-old son and 2-month-old daughter would grow up without their father because he happened to schedule an appointment at the wrong place at the wrong time. While Larry Reed was on the run, the United States Marshals Service got involved in the manhunt. The Marshals coordinated with Arlington Police Department, Mississippi law enforcement agencies, and other federal partners to track Reed's movements. They knew he had connections in Mississippi and that he was desperate, and they knew he was dangerous. The break in the case came on February 6, 2024, less than 2 weeks after the murders. Acting on tips from the public, law enforcement tracked Reed to a residence in the 800 block of Central Street in Greenville, Mississippi. When officers surrounded the property and announced their presence, Reed initially tried to hide. According to reports, he was found hiding in an attic of the residence, but eventually surrendered without incident after a call-out procedure. There's something almost poetic about the arrest that's worth noting. When Reed was arrested for his first murder back in 2012, local Arlington authorities apprehended him, and during this arrest in Mississippi, some of the officers involved were actually the sons of those original investigators, creating a full-circle moment where one generation of law enforcement officers finished what their fathers had started. It was a small measure of closure in a case that had reopened old wounds and created devastating new ones. Reed was taken into custody at the Washington County Jail in Mississippi to await extradition proceedings. By mid-February 2024, he had been transferred to the Lon Evans Corrections Center in Tarrant County, Texas, where he would face capital murder charges. In Texas, capital murder carries 2 possible sentences if convicted: life in prison without the possibility of parole, or the death penalty. Given Reed's history, given the brutality of this crime, the fact that he had already been given one chance after his first murder conviction, prosecutors would have every reason to seek the maximum penalty. But here's where the story takes a frustrating turn into the realm of unanswered questions. As of today, there are no public updates on Larry Reed's trial, conviction, or sentencing. It's as if the case simply disappeared into the legal system's black hole. Now, this isn't necessarily unusual. Capital murder cases are extraordinarily complex. They involve extensive evidence review, expert witnesses, potential appeals before trial even begins, jury selection processes that can take weeks, and trials that can last months. The wheels of justice in capital cases move slowly, sometimes taking years from arrest to trial, and then potentially years more of appeals after conviction. But the complete absence of any public information is notable. No trial date announcements, no plea deal reports, no conviction news, nothing. But here's what's truly chilling about Reed's case. This exact scenario has played out before in Texas with far more devastating consequences, and the parallels are impossible to ignore. Back in 1989, Texas released a convicted triple murderer named Kenneth McDuff after he had served 23 years for kidnapping and murdering 3 teenagers in 1966. McDuff had shot 2 boys and strangled a 16-year-old girl with a broomstick in one of the most brutal crimes in Texas history. He had been sentenced to death 3 times, but when the Supreme Court temporarily halted executions in 1972, his sentence was commuted to life in prison. And then Texas let him out, not once, but 3 times. McDuff was paroled in October 1989, one of 127 murderers released that year due to prison overcrowding. The state was under federal mandate to reduce its prison population, so parole boards were releasing 750 inmates every single week, including violent offenders who should have never seen freedom again. Within weeks of his release, McDuff was suspected in the murder of Serafia Parker, beaten and strangled just like his earlier victims. But police couldn't prove it, and McDuff remained free. McDuff violated parole with death threats and went back to prison, only to be paroled again in 1990. He violated again and was paroled yet again in 1991. This 3rd time, freedom allowed McDuff to kill at least 6 more confirmed victims, with investigators suspecting he murdered as many as 14 people after his release. He abducted, tortured, and killed women across Central Texas, including Brenda Thompson, Regina Moore, Colleen Reed, Valencia Joshua, and Melissa Northrup, a pregnant convenience store clerk who was kidnapped from work and strangled. Every single one of these women would be alive if Texas hadn't released McDuff. The McDuff case exposed corruption within the Texas parole system. His family had allegedly bribed parole board members to secure his release, part of a scandal that resulted in criminal convictions. And even after all the red flags, even after multiple parole violations, the system kept giving him chances until he finally went on a killing spree that terrorized the entire state. He wasn't caught until May 1992, after being featured on America's Most Wanted. McDuff was executed in November 1998, the only person in Texas history to be sentenced to death 3 times. The McDuff case led to sweeping reforms in Texas' judicial system: stricter parole guidelines for violent offenders, the end of mandatory early releases due to overcrowding, enhanced monitoring of paroled murderers. Andy Cahan called McDuff a killing machine whose legacy haunts every discussion about prison releases. And yet, decades later, Larry Reed's case shows that Texas still hasn't learned its lesson. Reed committed a felony assault in prison in 2021, live-streamed it on social media, possessed contraband that should have added years to his sentence, and faced 0 criminal consequences. Just like McDuff got multiple chances despite repeated violations, Reed was released after the system looked the other way on his prison crimes. And just in the same way McDuff quickly returned to killing after his release, Reed allegedly murdered 3 people within 6 weeks of getting out. The patterns are eerily identical, separated by 35 years, but connected by the same systemic failures.
The ball got dropped.
Sherry Siegelin spent 17 years as a correctional officer in the Texas prison system and says having a cell phone in prison is a 3rd-degree felony, punishable by 2 to 10 years in jail. She says the state had sufficient evidence in their hands to elongate Reed's sentence, potentially preventing those killings.
His cell phones are not something that you can just walk down to the commissary and get.
But WFAA learned Monday that Reed never faced any penalty for this. A Texas Department of Criminal Justice official told our news desk Reed illegally had a cell phone, that an investigation was done and sent to the Office of Inspector General, who would build a case for the agency's Special Prosecution Unit, which tries crimes behind bars. But an official for that unit told us it never received a case involving Reed ever, signaling the investigation never made it beyond the Office of the Inspector General. Reed had a flat discharge last December. The homicides took place the following month.
I don't know, I'm almost at a loss for words. To me, it just doesn't make sense. That's a black eye for the agency.
We've contacted the Office of Inspector General several times asking for more information about this incident, and we are still waiting to hear back.
What do you think about this case? Do you also think this triple murder could have been prevented if Reed remained in prison? Let me know what you think in the comments section. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.